We have all been told a million times, if you want more fiber, you just need to eat your vegetables. It's practically the golden rule of dietary
Oh,
advice.
absolutely. Everyone says that.
Right. But what if I told you that someone who meticulously tracks literally every measurable metric of their physical and mental life, everything, realized that vegetables are actually a terrible way to hit your daily fiber goals?
It's wild because it completely flips the script on what most of us consider basic health knowledge.
Hmm.
When you actually look at the data, and I mean really granular, uncompromising data, the conventional wisdom starts to, well, show some serious cracks.
And that is exactly what we're going to explore today. Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to unpack a micro case study in personal optimization. We're looking at a single, just incredibly detailed source. It's a This Week in Review blog post for week 32, published today, August 9th, 2026, by a writer named Ang.
Yeah, and the sheer granularity of this post is what makes it so compelling.
Exactly. We are going to look at how one person tracks their health, their diet, their coding projects, and, even their hobbies. The goal is to extract some universal lessons about systems thinking that you can actually apply to your own life.
Because what we're looking at is a snapshot of what happens when highly structured, almost algorithmic intentions meet the unpredictable friction of a normal human week.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the physical foundation, because Ang explicitly notes that proactive wellness is the bedrock of everything else. Without energy and clarity, the professional goals just do not happen.
Yeah, it's really about building a baseline of resilience.
Yeah.
But as we see here, even the best laid plans run into reality.
Boy, did they ever. Let's look at the sleep data, for instance. Ang normally aims for 6 to 8 hours a night, but this week the average dropped to 6.5 hours.
Which, again, for a lot of people listening, 6.5 hours might sound like a complete dream.
I know, right? But for Ang, it represents a significant dip in quality, especially over the weekend. And the culprit wasn't some massive crisis. It was a heat wave combined with literally a single cup of midnight tea.
Wow, just one cup.
Yeah, that one late-night drink completely shifted their sleep schedule, and it resulted in these long, groggy post-dinner naps all week long.
Which perfectly illustrates just how fragile biological rhythms can actually be.
What?
You introduce a slight thermal stressor, like a heat wave, and then you add a minor chemical shift from the tea, and boom, the circadian rhythm just derails.
It is like a Jenga tower of health routines.
Yeah.
You carefully stack all these blocks. You're doing your strength training, you are hitting your step counts, you're eating right. But then you pull out one single block at the very bottom. You have a midnight tea during a heat wave. And suddenly, the tower wobbles. You are taking weird naps, your schedule shifts, and the whole structure is just swaying. And to make it even more relatable, we get this fantastic transition regarding physical pain.
I love this part. This might honestly be the most profoundly human detail in the entire review.
I was laughing out loud when I read this. So Ang notes that their chronic knee and back pains have wonderfully subsided. They put in the work, they are totally pain-free. And then, almost immediately, they self-inflicted a brand new toe injury.
Unbelievable.
They literally cured their back pain only to stub their toe so badly it derailed their entire week.
The irony is just brilliant. And the cascading effects of that toe injury are fascinating to trace, honestly.
Completely derailed the exercise routine. Ang usually aims for somewhere up to 8,000 steps a day. The toe injury meant gardening chores were just postponed. It made them hyper-mindful of every single movement during their strength recovery, and it forced them to delay a swimming regime. Though, to be fair, they also mentioned the swimming was delayed because they had the incorrect swimming trunk, which is just, it's a hilarious roadblock to hit.
Yeah, let's pause on that, because the reaction to all this friction is what actually matters here. Think about how the average person reacts when they stub their toe. They can't go to the pool because they packed the wrong shorts, and on top of that, their sleep is totally ruined.
Yeah, the usual response is just immense frustration, right? A feeling that the week is ruined, so you might as well give up on all your goals and just try again next Monday.
Exactly. Most of us are totally guilty of that.
I am definitely guilty of the I'll start over on Monday mindset.
What's fascinating here is a complete lack of emotional self-flagellation from Ang. They treat the wobbling Jenga tower with total stoicism. When they couldn't swim, they didn't just abandon the exercise goal.
Right, they pivoted.
Exactly. They simply pivoted to doing delayed gardening errands that had been pushed back by heavy downpours earlier in the month, actually. And they still managed to maintain an average of 5,080 steps daily.
Wow.
They used heat pads for the toe. They categorized buying new exercise equipment as a mere pending item to be evaluated later. No drama.
So, wait, you're saying that hyper-tracking these minor failures doesn't just induce guilt? Because I always assume that measuring my bad sleep or, my missed workouts would just make me feel terrible about myself.
I get that, but for Aang, the tracking actually removes the emotional weight. When you document something neutrally, it ceases to be a moral failing and simply becomes an engineering problem.
That makes sense.
Yeah, the data points out the exact point of friction. The Jenga tower wobbled because of the tea. Noted. Do not drink the tea next time. The toe hurts. Pivot the mechanical load to a totally different activity. It is a highly adaptive response.
That transition from an emotional reaction to a data-driven adaptation is huge. And we see that exact same mentality applied to how Aang feels their body. If they can't control external factors like a heat wave or an accidental toe stub, they can absolutely control what goes into their digestive system.
And the dietary mechanics here are incredibly precise.
To put it mildly, Aang tracks their weight down to the hundredth of a decimal point. They note a shift from 69.79 kilograms last week to 69.91 kilograms this week.
Measuring literally a 120-gram difference.
Right, but again, no panic. Aang rationally attributes it to daily water weight fluctuations and notes they are successfully maintaining their weight. Then we get to the actual food.
The 211 diet.
Exactly. They follow a 211 or 221 diet ratio, balancing plants, proteins, and carbs. The menu includes oatmeal, soft-boiled eggs, cooked salads, miso noodle soup, a couple of sardine meals a week, and this intriguing caffeine-free ginger peppermint tea.
Which brings us back to that really surprising revelation you mentioned at the start of the deep dive.
Yes, the fiber discovery. We are always told to eat vegetables for fiber. Aang eats plenty of vegetables, but they realize through their tracking that vegetables do not actually move the needle on dietary fiber goals.
No, not really.
The real heavy lifters are seeds like chia and flax seeds and legumes like lentils and black beans.
Let's explore the mechanism behind that because it is vital for anyone listening who struggles with energy levels or digestion. Leafy vegetables are fantastic for micronutrients, vitamins and minerals. But structurally, a lot of the fiber in something like lettuce is just water and cellulose. It adds bulk, yeah, but it doesn't profoundly feed the gut microbiome in the way denser fibers actually do.
The gut microbiome being that massive community of microorganisms in the digestive tract.
Precisely. Seeds and legumes contain complex viscous fibers and resistant starches. When those hit your gut, they act as high-octane fuel for the beneficial bacteria living down there.
Oh, wow.
Those bacteria ferment the fiber and produce short-chain fatty acids, which regulate your metabolism, reduce inflammation, and crucially, even signal to your brain that you are full.
Which perfectly explains Aang's other major dietary rule, stopping eating at exactly 70% fullness.
Yeah, the 70% rule is fascinating because it relies entirely on the biological signaling we just talked about.
I have to push back here, though. Let's be real for a second. Tracking weight to the hundredth of a decimal, adhering to a strict 211 macro ratio, throwing chia seeds on everything, and trying to calculate exactly what 70% full feels like? Doesn't this run the risk of severely overcomplicating how we eat?
I could see that.
I mean, does this alienate the listener who barely has time to grab a sandwich between Zoom meetings?
I can see that it sounds like an intense administrative burden at first glance. If you try to adopt all of this overnight, you will absolutely burn out.
Right.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the 70% fullness rule isn't actually about mathematical restriction. It is a mechanism for mindfulness.
How so?
Well, it takes about 20 minutes for your gut to send those satiety signals to your brain. By aiming for 70% full, you are essentially forcing yourself to eat slower and pause before you feel completely stuffed. It is a physical circuit breaker.
Oh, okay.
And for the listener who is short on time, you don't need to adopt the spreadsheet tracking. Just knowing the mechanism that swapping a side salad for a scoop of lentils or just tossing some chia seeds in your yogurt fundamentally changes your gut chemistry. That is a tiny, actionable tweak with massive leverage.
A low-effort, high-reward habit. I like that. And I suppose when your gut is functioning smoothly and you aren't experiencing massive energy crashes from overeating, you suddenly have the bandwidth to focus on more complex tasks, which bridges us perfectly to how Aang treats their mind.
Exactly. The physiological discipline directly buys the cognitive bandwidth.
Yeah.
You really cannot separate the two.
And Aang applies the exact same analytical rigor to their cognitive architecture as they do to their diet. They have a highly structured meditation practice bursts of 1, 2, or 3 minutes of sitting meditation. They use a technique called mental noting and even practice walking meditation while doing gardening chores, like raking leaves. And they explicitly frame this through a stoic lens.
Training the emotional baseline so that when the Jenga tower inevitably wobbles, the mind just remains steady.
Then there is the writing and reading. 3 posts daily, some casual capturing of thoughts, a pending book project about health called the 3 Highs Guide. But the most futuristic detail is that Aang takes their own written reflections, feeds them into AI, and generates podcasts and YouTube videos to review their own thought process.
They are essentially building an AI mirror. By outsourcing the reflection to an external audio or video format, they can critique their own logic as a third-party observer.
It's brilliant.
It is wild. And that use of AI bleeds directly into their daily coding practice, which is where this entire philosophy of structural control really peaks. Aang hops through various GitHub projects, touching languages like Go, Python, and Rust, but they had a major philosophical breakthrough recently with a language called Haskell.
Yeah, Haskell's notoriously rigorous, and the lessons Aang pulls from it are pretty profound.
They mentioned reading a specific series of posts, parts 206, 207, and 208, of a tutorial that really illuminated the power of a type system. The specific phrase Aang uses is learning to leverage the type system to make illegal states unrepresentable.
They also talk about the idiom to parse, don't validate.
Let's break those concepts down because they are incredibly powerful, even if you have never written a single line of code in your life.
Please do, because make illegal states unrepresentable sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi novel.
Think of a type system in programming, like one of those wooden-shaped sorter toys for toddlers. You know the ones.
Yeah, sure.
You have a square hole, a round hole, and a star-shaped hole. If you try to force the round peg into the square hole, it physically will not fit. The physical structure of the toy prevents the error.
Okay, I follow that.
Well, in a lot of programming languages, you might write code that says, if the user tries to put the round peg in the square hole, flash a warning message. That is validation. You are constantly checking to see if someone made a mistake.
Right.
But in Haskell, a strong type system means you design the program so the round peg physically cannot exist in the same universe as the square hole. The error cannot happen because the architecture makes it impossible. That is making an illegal state unrepresentable.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. Can we take that coding concept and apply it to our daily human habits? Like, think about the Haskell rule applied to a diet.
Oh, I like where this is going.
If you want to eat less junk food, don't just rely on your willpower to validate your choices at 9 p.m. when you are completely exhausted from work. Willpower is just a warning message, and you will eventually ignore it.
Definitely.
Instead, change your architecture. Do not buy the junk food at the grocery store. Change your physical environment so the junk food is not in your house at all. Make the bad habit structurally impossible to execute.
That is a phenomenal translation of the concept. You are shifting the burden from active decision-making to structural design. And Aang actually notes that artificial intelligence is helping them do exactly this in their coding.
Oh, how so?
Well, AI handles the repetitive boilerplate code, the mundane typing, which frees Aang up to focus entirely on designing the overarching architecture of the program.
So, using the junk food analogy, using a grocery delivery app to automatically deliver healthy food would be the AI handling the boilerplate, right? Freeing you from the temptation of walking down the cookie aisle in the first place.
Precisely. It is about building fail-safes into your routines so that doing the right thing becomes your default state.
Yeah.
You don't have to constantly choose to be good. The system simply doesn't allow you to be bad.
Taking that idea of designing an environment making bad states unrepresentable, Aang applies this literally to the physical space around them. We move from the abstract logic of Haskell straight into the dirt and water of their home environment. Aang actively cultivates their physical space through their hobbies.
And it is worth noting their stated philosophy here. They don't view hobbies as a way to just kill time or zone out. Hobbies exist to build skills, offer a creative outlet, and add a layer of purpose to life that is entirely separate from their professional routine.
It is highly active engagement. The home improvement projects are relentless, but, micro-scaled. Aang does minor daily decluttering by getting rid of literally just one item a day.
Just one?
Yeah. They have a pending project to install curtains. They are planning grout work on the front balcony tiles. Outside, they're systematically clearing weeds across 4 different designated workspaces, raking leaves and waiting on seeds to germinate.
There is a deep, deep patience in that kind of observation.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't rush a seed germinating.
And that patient observation translates directly to their photography. Aang didn't go on any big photo expeditions this week, but they used an upgraded mobile phone camera to take close-up shots of the plant species right in their own garden. It revealed all these hidden, microscopic details.
Wow.
Now they're tumbling down a research rabbit hole, looking into used a DSLR camera just for better macro photography. They want to zoom in closer to the literal reality of the dirt.
Finding intense novelty in the completely mundane. It's beautiful. And then, of course, we have the fish keeping.
The yellow-blue rack. So Aang is meticulously tweaking the water environment in a fish tank to try and induce breeding among their dwarf cichlids. They are managing LED light installations, allocating sponge filters, planning outdoor balcony ponds, and sourcing entirely new fish species.
They are essentially playing God with a micro-ecosystem. Think about the mechanics of a fish tank. You're managing the nitrogen cycle, monitoring ammonia levels, adjusting pH and temperature. It is a highly sensitive environment.
I am looking at this list of hobbies, though, and I have to ask, Aang lists these activities almost exactly like a corporate project board. You know, pending items, LED installations, grout allocations.
Yeah, very structured.
Are we just gentrifying relaxation here? Is there a danger that treating our downtime like a highly structured to-do list completely strips the joy out of it?
This raises an important question for sure. For a spontaneous personality type, this level of structure would absolutely feel like a prison. But we have to recognize how different minds experience joy. For a highly analytical systems thinker like Aang, intentional tinkering is the joy. The structure isn't a burden, it is the canvas they paint on.
So the joy comes from the control.
Exactly. Look at the context of the week. The heat wave disrupts sleep. A random toe injury ruins a workout routine. The real world is inherently chaotic and largely out of our control.
Sure.
But a fish tank, a macro lens focused on a single leaf, that is a zone of absolute sovereignty. By tweaking the pH of the water to perfectly suit a dwarf cichlid, or taking 15 minutes to clear weeds from one specific square foot of a garden, Aang is practicing active observation. It provides a profound, anchoring sense of peace to create order in a small space when the larger world is just entirely unpredictable.
So, what does this all mean for you, the person listening right now? We have covered a lot of ground today, bouncing from disrupted sleep cycles and the digestive mechanics of chia seeds to Haskell coding architecture and the nitrogen cycle of dwarf cichlids.
We really have.
The takeaway is certainly not that you need to start tracking your weight to the 100th of a decimal, or that you need to learn how to code in a functional programming language tonight.
No, that would entirely miss the point.
The real lesson is about the immense power of intentionality and structural design. If you apply just a fraction of Aang's deliberate approach to your own week, the results really compound. Maybe that means swapping out a starchy side dish for lentils because you now understand the mechanics of your gut microbiome. Or maybe it means taking a stoic, data-driven breath when your Jenga tower wobbles, instead of letting a stubbed toe ruin your entire emotional week. You design your environment so the good habits are easy and the bad habits are structurally impossible.
If there is one image to walk away with, think about Aang painstakingly adjusting the temperature and filtration of that fish tank to help those dwarf cichlids thrive. What if you looked at your own life with that same level of environmental curiosity?
Oh, I like that.
If you are feeling stressed, constantly tired, or stagnant this week, perhaps it isn't a fundamental flaw in your character. Perhaps it isn't a lack of willpower. Perhaps, just like those cichlids, you simply need to step back and tweak the conditions of your environment.
Life does not have to be a seamless, perfectly executed plan to be successful. It is murky, it is filled with friction, and sometimes you end up at the pool with the wrong swimming trunks. But if you observe the data neutrally and adjust your architecture, you can navigate the mess. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep learning, keep observing, and keep tweaking your own environment. Until next time.